Today, we're going to learn how we can connect an Express app to a MySQL server with only a single package. And this way, we have true data persistence and we can call upon that data whenever we need it. Now, before we get started, we need to make sure that our MySQL server is running. So to do that, we can go into our command line here, and we can just paste in this command. So long as we never change the default save location whenever we installed the MySQL server. We can go ahead and run that, and that should ensure that our server is running. Now we need to install the package that is going to allow us to connect our Express app here to our MySQL server. So we're going to go ahead and install npm install MySQL 2 is what it's called, and we're going to go ahead and allow that to install. So now that our MySQL 2 package has been installed, we can go ahead and we can require it up here in the code. So we could say const MySQL is equal to require MySQL 2, just like that. Now we can go ahead and create a database connection to our database. So I'm going to create a constant. I'm going to say const db is equal to MySQL dot create connection, just like that. And we are going to pass in an object of options. So inside of here, there are three required options that we have to pass in. We have to pass in the host, the user, and the database that we want to use. And if you set up a password on your database, you need to make sure you pass in a password option as well. So the host, in most cases, is going to be localhost, just like that. And we can separate these with a comma. Now, if you've never changed anything from the very default, you should have a root user as well. So we could pass in the user, and we could say that the user is going to be root. And then I've already created a basic database with a basic table structure and everything like that. So I'm going to pass in the database that we're going to use as well. Now, if you haven't created the database or the database structure, I would recommend to do that before you actually do this. That way you already have everything in place. Plus you need to pass in the name of the database that you want to use so that the Express app can connect to it. So we're going to say that the database that we're going to use is the test database. And of course, if you do have a password, you can pass in the password here, along with if you ever change the port from the default, which is 3306, you can also pass in the port here as well. Just like that. You can also pass in the port number that you wanted to use if it's not the default of 3306. But if you never change that, you don't have to worry about it. But now that we have created a connection to our database, we can go ahead and start pulling data from our database. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and head down to our route down here. And inside of here, we're going to say db.query. And inside of here, we're just going to go ahead and write our database query. So we can go ahead and say select star from, and then I've got a table in there called posts. So we could say select star from posts. Now this function actually takes in a callback function as well. And then this callback function takes in three separate parameters. So the first parameter is going to be the error parameter. Now the next one is going to be the results parameter. These are the results that are coming back from the database. And then we've got a third parameter called fields. Now we can go ahead and write our callback function here, and now we can access all three of these once our database has come back with our query. So we can go ahead and say, let's say console.log results, and let's just see how it comes back from our database. So I'm going to start our server, and then I'm going to pull in a window here real quick, and we're just going to hit that. And if we do that, we can see that I've got some data coming back, and it looks like it's an array of objects. So we have an array of objects that is coming back from our database. So now we can actually just pass that in to our EJS view. So we could say res.render, and we could pass in to the index view, we could pass in as an object the results. Just like that. And that's going to pass in that array to our front end for us. Now, if we go ahead and save that, we can see over here, the data that was pulled from our database is now being filled out on our front end here. And if we refresh, it's going to continue to fill out properly for us like that. Now, whenever we are writing our database queries like this using the callback method, we need to wrap our database queries in a try-catch block. So we need to wrap everything here inside of a try block. And then we need to be able to catch that with the error being passed in. And for now, we'll just go ahead and console.log the error down here. So anytime you're writing a query that is utilizing the callback method, we need to wrap them inside of a try-catch block just like this. And this goes for anything that we're selecting, anything that we're posting to the database, any updates. Anytime we are writing a query, it needs to be wrapped inside of a try-catch block. So now, if there ever is an error whenever we are pulling data from our database, we will get it inside of this error parameter. And to check to see if we have an error, we can just say if error, because if there's no error, it will be null. And if there is an error, we can go ahead and throw a new error. So we could say throw new error, and we could pass in the error message, something went wrong. Now, we've thrown this error only if we get an error whenever we are pulling data from our database, and this error is going to be thrown inside of a try block, so then it will be caught down here by the catch block, and right now, for now, it will be logged out to the console. So let's now take a look at an example. So I've got this view here, and inside of this view, we have a form, and its action is going to slash, and it's a post. So we can fill out this form with the username and the post that we are posting. And let's go ahead and have this be submitted to the backend and then stored inside of the database, just like you normally would with a regular social media post. So let's go ahead and head over to our backend here, and let's create another route here. So we can say app.post, and this is going to be the slash route. And we will add our request and our response. So let's go ahead and wrap this in our try and our catch. And we'll just add our console log down here in case something happens. Now, whenever it comes in here, it's going to be on the request.body. So let's create a constant called body. Set that equal to request.body. Then we can go ahead and check to see if we have data in every single one of these. So if we don't have data in the username or in the post text, we're going to just reject that on the back end here before it even gets to the database. So we're going to go ahead and create a constant called has empties, and we're going to set that equal to object.values, and we're going to pass in our object, which is our body. And that's going to return an array of the values, and we want to check if every value has a value. So we can say return val is not equal to an empty string, just like that. And as long as every single one of them has a value, so as long as there's a value here and a value here, we will not trip this, and this will be false. So now we can check if has empties, and if this is true, that means we have an empty somewhere. So in that case, we can just return res.redirect, and we can just redirect to the slash page. And this isn't really going to give any kind of information to the client, but this is going to prevent it from being added to our database. So now, as long as we get past this and we don't have any empties, then we can go ahead and add this to our database. So we could say db.query, and we can add our query string here. So we could say insert into, and then we could add our post table here is the one we're going to insert it into. And we could say we're going to insert the username and the post underscore text. And then we could say that our values are going to be, and we need to surround these in double quotes, it's going to be body.username separated by comma, and it's going to be body.post_text. And don't forget our semicolon at the end of our query string here. Then after the query string, we can pass in the callback function that is going to give us our error, our results, and our fields. So we can accept those three parameters here: error, results, and fields. And then we can check to see if we have an error. So if error, then we can throw new error, and we can pass in our error message: something went wrong. And if we don't have an error, then we can just say res.redirect, and we could redirect to the slash page, and we could return that. Now, whenever we say return res.redirect, it's just going to send another GET request to the backend here, and it's going to go through this whole process all over again. So it's going to pull the data from the database, and it's going to return it back to the front end here, and that new post is then going to be added to that front end here because we just inserted it into the database. So now it's part of the database, and we can actually pull that from the database whenever we redirect back to the slash page. And there's one more thing that I forgot to mention here. We actually need to negate this here, because if we don't, then this is always going to be hit if these things are filled up, because the way we had it before is that we're looking for empties up here. So if every single one of these is not empty, so if this is true for every single one of them, then this is going to return true. Then we would hit this every single time, and we don't want that. We only want this whenever this is false and there is an empty in there, so we need to negate that so that's true whenever this here is false. So now if we go ahead and save that, we should be able to create a post. So we can say Kyland and something fun. And if we hit submit, we didn't crash, so that's a positive sign. And if we go all the way down to here to the bottom, we can see that that post was pulled successfully from the database. And you can see that we not only submitted that post to the database, we also redirected back to the GET post up here, the GET route right here, and we were able to pull that brand new post that we just posted from the database right here. And that is about it for how you can connect an Express app to a MySQL database using only a single package. Now, there is another way that you can write queries using this package, but that requires you to use modules. So if you want to check that out, you can go ahead and check out the documentation. I'll link that down in the description down below if you want to go and check that out. Otherwise, if you did like the video, make sure you slap a like on it. Check out the full playlist, link is right down there. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.